I would like to apologise for the quality of my voice. I have COVID at the moment, but it does make me sound a lot sexier, so I am happy about that. Enjoy the husky voice. Initially, when I started writing my Idiot's Guide to Doctor Who Canon, I wanted to go into a lot more detail than I ended up doing. But in the end, I decided to make it a short and sweet explanation of how I view the role of Canon in a show like Doctor Who. So, I've decided to turn it into a series, where I discuss and dissect various contentious parts of Doctor Who lore. Over the years, there have been many attempts to make sense out of this show that is constantly contradicting itself, and in the many vain efforts to fit square pegs into round holes, we've gotten some pretty damn interesting fan theories. A lot of these are crap, and I'm of the opinion that the people who have come up with them desperately need their heads examined, preferably by a power drill. But some are actually pretty damn good, and have been snatched up by the BBC and made an official part of their canon, or as official as canon gets for Doctor Who. The best example of this is Season 6B. You've probably heard the phrase thrown around a lot in Doctor Who circles within the last couple of years, particularly after the reveal of the Fugitive Doctor in Season 12, as a possible explanation for where she fits in the Doctor's timeline. And in my view, it's the only one that makes any sense. And if you would like to explain exactly why I'm so fucking wrong about that, fuck off, I've got a machete. But what is Season 6B? Does it fit into the canon? Will it buy me lunch? And does it do the sex thing? Yes, no, probably, and only when Jamie is around. This is an Idiot's Guide to Season 6B. On the TARDIS Wiki, Season 6B, also known as Season 6 but with a lowercase b, or Season 6B but in brackets, is defined as a narrative space between the televised Doctor Who stories, the War Games, and the beginning of Spearhead in space. At the end of the War Games, the Second Doctor was unable to resolve things, so he had to pull a literal Deus Ex Machina out of his arse, make a cube, and summon the Time Lords to help. This was the first ever appearance of the Time Lords, and with each consecutive appearance, they seemed to lose more and more power, to the point where they are eventually wiped out by a single guy, but that's a rant for another time. Here they are depicted as omnipotent techno-gods, with complete mastery over all of time and space. They make short work of the bad guys in the story by literally erasing them and their entire race from existence with just a thought, but at what cost? Putting it in Star Trek terms, the Time Lords have a prime directive, and that is not to interfere with the development of lower species, which to them is anyone who doesn't have mastery over all of time and space and all of frickin' creation. Anyway, interfering is all the Doctor really does, so he's put on trial and made to answer for his crimes.
True, I am guilty of interference. Just as you are guilty of failing to use your great powers to help those in need.
Is that all you have to say?
Well, isn't it enough?
But the Doctor is still sentenced to exile and regeneration. Essentially, the Second Doctor has been sentenced to death, and his companions Jamie and Zoe are put back in their correct places in the timeline, their memories of their adventures completely erased. Zoe back to the wheel in space, and Jamie back to his revolution against the British Crown, where he almost certainly will be put to death as a Jacobite insurgent. This isn't the last we see of the Second Doctor though. He shows up again in the 3 Doctors, and then again in the 5 Doctors. And Troughton enjoyed coming back so much for that, they insisted on coming back in a 6th Doctor story, the 2 Doctors, alongside Jamie McCrimmon. Over the years, nobody really questioned these events. That is until home video became a thing. Suddenly, copies of the War Games and other old episodes were easily available to anyone who wanted them. For the first time ever, fans could watch all of these episodes in order, and all together, and could easily compare them. Well, at least the ones that haven't been scrapped, that is. They were never meant to be viewed in this way. After all, TV back then was basically a one-and-done deal. Home media wasn't a thing, reruns weren't exactly a thing until, like, the 70s, so nobody really expected that anybody would see the War Games and then get to see Spearhead in space and get to see all the specials all together, and be able to compare them easily. The creators of this shit completely underestimated the sheer amount of obsession that is involved in fandom, and fans inevitably noticed all the obvious and very glaring inconsistencies. They started to ask questions like how the Third Doctor in his first episode has certain items including a ring, a bracelet, a TARDIS homing watch, and a tattoo of a snake that the Second Doctor certainly did not have at the end of the War Games. In the 3 Doctors and the 2 Doctors, why was the Second Doctor seemingly willingly working with the Time Lords? Something that he never did. Why did the Doctor look older every time he showed up again? In the 2 Doctors, how does Jamie know about the Time Lords? He never found out about them until he met them. And why is the console room a different design? And where the hell did 2 get a Saturnheim remote control? And why doesn't the 6th Doctor remember having the Saturnheim remote control?
Saturnheim remote control? Where did you get that? I've always wanted one of those.
Some of us have earned these little privileges.
The list of inconsistencies goes on, and from a non-story perspective, a lot of this can be explained by poor writing, and a complete lack of consideration for continuity. The TARDIS homing watch was just a cool new gadget for the Third Doctor to have to fit in with the James Bond aesthetic that they were going for. And the Second Doctor looks older because the actor who played him was getting older. It tends to happen. With the snake tattoo, Pertwee got it back in his Navy days, one night while he was blackout drunk. And that's been reinterpreted as a fugitive tattoo that the Time Lords give to people who are being sentenced of a crime. It's an entire piece of Fennon of its own, which isn't really worth getting into, but you just know that Chibnall is going to bring it up again. Especially after seeing this guy in Flux who has an identical tattoo, and see these people who have identical tattoos. I mean, fucking hell, Chibnall. Why are you trying to make all your fan theories canon? You don't have to do that, that's not your job. But Doctor Who fans saw a hole, and when they see holes in the storyline, they need to fill it with something. From the primordial sludge of cumulative inconsistencies, a piece of Fennon was born, and was embraced by the fandom, gaining such notoriety that it was picked up by the BBC and made part of the official BBC episode guide on their website since 2011. The theory goes like this: the Doctor was sentenced, but his sentence was not immediately carried out. Instead, he was recruited by the CIA, the Celestial Intervention Agency, sort of a Time Lord secret service, a clandestine organisation that interferes with the affairs of lower races so the High Council doesn't have to get their hands dirty. During this time, the Second Doctor did an unknown number of missions, was given a Saturnheim remote control likely to make him a more effective field agent. At some point, he managed to convince them to let him pick up Jamie again, and he travelled with him for a few decades. Eventually, after hundreds of years, if the 11th Doctor's last episode is anything to go by, he was let go and his sentence was finally carried out, and his memories erased. Season 6B is probably the most interesting thing to come out of fan speculation. It was completely by accident. Nobody planned it. Nobody invented Season 6B. It just sort of happened. And there are a lot of stories that take place during this period in the Doctor's life. Honestly, a lot more than I thought there would be. There's the obvious 3 that I've already gone over in the classic show, but that was just speculation until Season 6B started being referenced in other media. Ironically, it was Terrance Dicks, co-writer of the War Games, writer of the 5 Doctors, and script editor during the 3 Doctors, who first put it into practice in his Players trilogy novels. Which is appropriate seeing as it was his shoddy writing that created most of the inconsistencies in the first place. Since then, Big Finish have explored it in their early adventures range, in their monthly plays, and in the short trips. And this year, they've announced a box set of full cast audio plays starring the Second Doctor and set after the War Games. It's even called After the War Games, starring Michael Troughton, who's filling in for his dad. They released a sneak peek of what it will look like, with a 3rd Doctor story called The Annihilators, featuring the 2nd Doctor travelling with a much older Jamie McCrimmon. Michael does a fantastic job of giving us just enough of his dad while adding his own flair to the character, and it is wonderful and I love it. Seriously, all of you should listen to this. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little plunge into the murky depths of Doctor Who lore. Join me in the next one where I explain exactly why you're all wrong about the Valeyard. Until then, do all the normal stuff, like and subscribe, please like and subscribe. I mean, honestly, I never ask you people for anything. Just do it, come on, like and subscribe, please, I'll be your friend. Like and subscribe.